This is part 2 of the brick blanket. In this video, you will learn how to crochet the mortar border. While the border is easy to crochet, there are a few secrets to success. The first secret is understanding the layout. Since I live in a small house, I did the layout on my bed. You can also use a large table or even the floor. But the point is, when using scrap yarns to create the bricks, it's important to complete and arrange all the pieces before starting the border. This way, the colors can be evenly distributed in a pleasing manner throughout the blanket. The second secret is that the rows are on the diagonal. While this keeps finishing to a minimum, only 2 ends to weave in per row, it also allows you to group the pieces row by row and pack it up. But make sure to take the time to align pieces with the front side facing and the beginning row at the bottom. This means the lower right hand corner would be the one with the beginning yarn tail woven in. Do this before packing them up. This assures that the order, alignment, and color will be just the way you want it when you go to assemble a row. So now I'm going to pick them up, this one and then the one behind it. And this is my row 1, so I'm going to just arrange it and fold it over and put it into this particular bag. That's marked number 1. So now all I have to do, I know it's facing up and I know it's number 1, so I can just toss it off to the side. Now row 2, the diagonal row 2 is this piece, and this piece, and this piece. Because I have to always remember that might be, if it had been a whole brick, it would have been further out. So I'm going to pick them up in order and bring them behind. And since it's a partial piece and my bags are sort of small, I'm just folding it over with the front piece on top, on the outside. So on row 3, I'm going to pick up this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, and I get another half piece. Fold it over and stuff it in my row 3 bag. What's nice about this method is you don't have to rethink it. Half the time you spend is rethinking on how you're going to arrange it, and if you mixed them up, how are you going to make it so that it works? This way, you have them all ready done. You're actually going to start in this corner, go this way, up and around, down, and come through here, come back out here, and end up here. That will attach these 2 pieces together and border all of the sides of both of the pieces. That's the whole object of this, is to do it as easily and quickly as you can. So I'm going to start in this corner, and in the very first stitch I'm going to insert my hook under the both loops of that stitch. Now this edge originally was the foundation chain. I rolled it over and I did the first row in the back loop. That creates this beautiful edge that looks just like the ending edge of single crochet. Can you see that? It looks exactly the same. So it's very easy to count the stitches. I inserted my hook under the top 2 loops of the very first stitch. I'm pulling up a loop just to attach the yarn, and I'm dropping my yarn tail off because I'll weave that in, and I'm going to chain 1 just to attach the yarn. I'm going to pull that nice and tight, and in that very same stitch I'm going to work 1 single crochet. The attaching of the yarn isn't really going to count as a stitch. In the next stitch I'm going to work a single crochet. Then I'm going to chain 2. Skip this stitch, and then in the very next stitch I'm going to work a single crochet and then another single crochet in the next stitch. Chain 2. Skip 1, single crochet in the next stitch and the next stitch. We're going to repeat this all the way across. So there I did my 2 single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches, chain 2, skip 1, and then go into the next one and work the single crochet. That is the basic mortar border. The trick to the mortar border is how you turn and join the pieces together. And that brings us to the end. And so we're going to work 1 here and 1 in the very end stitch. That will give us 10 groups of 2 single crochets across this edge. Let's count 1, 2. When we get to the corner, and we're going to turn the corner, we're going to chain 2. On this row, you're going to skip the first row, which is where this stitch is placed, and we're going to go into that loop. You'll find that there are 5 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we will have 5 groups along this. But it's worked a little bit differently than this edge. Okay? So, we skip this first one where that stitch is, and in the next row, around the end stitch of the next row, we're going to work 2 single crochets. We're going to chain 2. We're going to skip this row and go right into that space. And they're just jumping out, waiting for you to fill them in. 1, 2, and chain 2. Skip this row, go into that nice big space that's around that stitch. 1, 2, and chain 2. And in this one right there, see how big these stitches are? So just really obvious. Skip this row and then into this one. 1, 2, chain 2. And then the last one, skip this row and go into that one. 1, 2. And we're at the corner, so we're going to chain 2. 1, 2. That helps us turn the corner. And in the very first stitch, we're going to start working this side exactly the same as this side here. But we're only going to work 5 groups at first. Once we do the 5 groups of 2 single crochets with the chain 2s in between, then we're going to go up this side. So I'm going to skip this first stitch because I'm going to use that later. I'm going to go right into that stitch where I want to place my 2 single crochets, chain 2, skip that row, go right into that one. Because on the sides, it's just so obvious where you want to place those 2. 2 single crochets and chain 2 for the corner. Now, this is a half brick, so obviously we're not going to go as far along there. We have 5 groups on this side. That's the key. You want to make sure you have 5 groups on the short sides of the bricks, and you want to make sure on the long edge of the brick you have 10 groups, and when you're doing halfway across you have 5 groups. So on this side over here, we're going to do the exact same thing that we did along the long side, except it's a half brick, so we're going to have less groups. And going to chain 2. That one is covered. Now when we come down this side, it looks a little bit different. When you're coming up the right side, it's going to look like that. When you come down this side, it's a little bit different. So if you can see, you're going to skip this first row, and this is where you're going to place your 2. It's just because it's the opposite side is that it looks different. So we have 5 on this edge too. Now, let's go back to our normal configuration. We still have to come across this bottom edge of this half brick. Okay? So we're going to completely turn our work upside down, and we're going to do our chain 2 for the corner, and in that very first stitch we're going to put our single crochet, and in the next one a single crochet, chain 2, skip 1. We've just finished our 5 groups along this side, but now we need to jump over to this side and work our groups along that side so that border on this brick is finished. But we're at the corner, we're going to chain 2 and of course turn our work around because I can't work upside down. And we're going to skip 1 here and I'm going to work a single crochet in each of the next 2, just like before. That's 1 and here's 2. Okay, that leaves us 2 bars, 2 chain 2 bars between these pieces. That's fine, they're kind of loose yet, but when we come around on the next row, I'll show you how to deal with that, and they'll be nice and firm. But right now, if we do our chain 2 and continue on this side, these will be separate. So what we need to do is put them together. I call it a lock stitch. It's just how you join these 2 together. Now, we're at the point where we're doing a chain 2, or supposedly doing a chain 2. What we want to do is we want to do the first of the chain 2, take our loop off our hook, insert our hook in the space that's formed by the corresponding chain 2 on the other adjacent motif. Pick up that loop and pull that loop to the front. Then we're going to chain 1 more. That's our second chain. And what that does is it joins our mortar border together. So now we have this turned around going this way. So then we skip 1 and work a single crochet in each of the next 2, chain 1, take our loop off our hook, insert it in the other side, and pull this loop up through there. Chain 1. Come back over here, skip 1, and do a single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. Chain 1. Take our loop off our hook, insert it over in the corresponding chain 2 space on the one that we're joining to, and chain 1 more. So if you can see, that joins it in a very neat fashion, and that is the essence of the mortar border. But there's a few more tricks that I need to show you. We're at the point where we're skipping 1, going into the next stitch, 1, 2. Now we're going to chain 1, go up to the corner space, pull that loop through, and chain 1. So now you can see how this looks. This one has turned and gone this direction, but our pieces are joined together. Finish row 1 by working the border along the last edge, same as before. Slip stitch into the very first stitch at the beginning of the round. This is when we can cut our yarn. Just weave these ends in. Weave 1 along here and 1 along the side. To get a better understanding of the construction of the border, let's trace a typical pathway. Begin by working across the outer edge, up the steps on the right side of the diagonal row. Once you get around the last motif of the row, then, and only then, do you begin to come down the left side of the diagonal row, back and forth, joining the borders. At some point, the first motif in your diagonal row will be starting on the side. You just want to start on the outside edge in that corner and work along this edge, do your chain 2, move up, and go on around your pieces. When you come back, instead of having a turnaround loop here like this over here, you're going to actually work across the bottom of this piece and work a lock stitch around that edge chain 2, and then come back and continue doing your lock stitches on the adjacent side. One of the things that you have to pay attention to is not twisting these when you turn them, okay? So you can let them go, but just make sure they're untwisted when you go to work on the next piece. Whenever a working edge is adjacent to an edge with a border, you will be joining. Sometimes this means only half a brick edge will be joined and the other half not. So we're at this corner where we have to join the 3 corners together. So we can chain 1. I'm going to just insert it into the space that I would normally be the next space that I would join. Pick up that loop and chain 1. Now I'm going to continue down this side of the border. We've done our last 2 and we've chained our 1. We take our loop off our hook. Where we're going to insert our hook on this one is in that funny little loop that was formed when we reversed. In there and under the bar. Pick up the loop, bring it through, draw it through, pull it up tight, and chain 1. That will close that corner so neatly, but we have to do a few more stitches in order for to really see the effect. And you can see how nice that is. Isn't that lovely? We're going to continue along this brick, up and join along here. When we get to this point, we're going to just continue this side plain, just without having joining. But when we make this turn, we're going to reverse and come back. And then down this edge and join along this edge. When we come back along here, we're going to be joining to this side. So that is how you assemble the mortar border. In part 3, I will share the last secret, how to crochet the outer border. This narrow border frames the whole blanket, smooths out the transitions between bricks, and thickens the edges. No fuss, neatly trimmed, a perfect edging for such a masculine blanket. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please take a moment to subscribe and ring the bell to receive notifications of upcoming videos and events. Happy crocheting!